first of all, I thought what I'd do is start a little bit about what is the journey? Why did we get to where we've got to? And this is the Perpetual Guardian trial. Now, way back in 2018, I was sitting on a plane and I was trying to work out why my productivity was so awful in the company. And I'd read an article on the plane that said that Brits were productive for 3 hours a day and Canadians were productive for 1.5 hours a day. And I wondered if that was happening in my company, and if it was happening in my company, what I could do about it, and also what was causing it. And I figured what was causing it was that there's an awful lot of interruptions in a working day. Statistically, if you're in an open plan office, you get interrupted once every 11 minutes. It takes you 22 minutes to get back to full productivity. So I thought, what would happen if I gifted my staff an extra day off a week? And I said to them, look, I'm going to pay you for 5 days. I only want you to work for 4, but I need you to work out what it is you would do differently in your working week so that I would get the same levels of output. And broadly, every single member of my leadership team threw their toys out of the pram. My board of directors was horrified, but I said, look, heck, we're going to do this anyway. And they also came back to me and said, Andrew, how do you think we're going to do it? And I said, well, genuinely, I have actually no idea whatsoever, but I think we'll follow some basic principles. Number one is, this is quite scary. It was quite scary for me. It was quite scary for the people in the organization. So I wanted to make sure that what we did when we tried this, that our people would be okay. That was the number one issue. The second thing, obviously, it had to be productivity based. I had a private capital company as a 50% shareholder. There was no way they were going to let me try this experiment if, in fact, at the end of the day, our productivity, our profitability was going to fall. So we also, therefore, had to be open for business. We have 17 retail branches around New Zealand. So effectively, we had to remain open. And also, at the same time, we had to make sure that our customer service, wasn't adversely impacted in any shape or any form. But as I said, right from the get-go, I said, look, how do we do it? I have no idea. What we have to do is go to the staff and say, genuinely, what are you going to do differently such that we can do the work in 4 days rather than 5? And so what we did is we said, look, we're going to have a month of planning, and then we're going to run what was initially 6 weeks, then went on to 12 weeks trial. And we're going to do it on a team basis. You are going to think about how you can contribute for your team. You're going to choose your day off. Remember, we couldn't close. So you're going to put in dibs for which day you're going to have off. And obviously not everybody could take Friday and not everybody could take Monday. So it was viewed that we would rotate these round. And then I'd like to say, because that I really thought about this, and this was a stroke of absolute genius, but actually it was a fluke that an academic from Auckland University of Technology read about what we were trying to do and came forward and said, look, could he run some research alongside? And that had been something that I'd been quite keen on, primarily because I needed to get the board off my back, because they were sitting there saying, how can we prove that actually this is not going to be detrimental to the organization? So we ran qualitative and quantitative research alongside. Now, as I said, right from the get-go, my leadership team, to a person, thought this was going to fail. Actually, this is what happened. So we found that our team engagement scores went up 40%, 40%. So you can see 4 of them here: leadership, commitment, stimulation, and empowerment. The researchers who had been doing quite a lot of study on this in New Zealand came back and said what was remarkable was that the baseline research had been done after we'd announced the 4-day week So if we'd done it pre to that announcement, they thought the increase would have been higher. As it was, these levels were the highest results they had ever seen in a New Zealand company. Stress levels dropped, 15%. And what was critical was more people said they were better able to do their job working 4 days rather than 5. The other key findings we found that there was an improvement in teamwork, readiness for change, and team creativity and performance. And our productivity went up 100 to 125% of our original productivity. Now, I initially thought all I wanted to do was to maintain productivity at the levels. I didn't expect to see actually that we would see a massive increase in productivity. Now, why does this work? Well, this works because we have this concept of what we call 100, 80, 100. 100% pay, 80% time, provided we get 100% productivity. So what we're doing is we are gifting our employees a gift that they can't put a value on. And that gift is the time that is critical to them. And the best way I think I can explain this is to tell a couple of stories. So I have a grandfather in my organization in our Dunedin office. And what he does is he now takes a couple of afternoons off a week. That's how we do it. And people can work 4 days, they can work 5 days, but have 2 afternoons off. Or in fact, some staff, especially parents, will work 5 days a week, but compressed hours. And that enables them to drop the kids off and pick them up at the end of the day. And this chap is a guy who does 2 afternoons a week, and he walks home and it gets him a little bit fitter. And then in the afternoon, his granddaughter comes around and they do grandfather-granddaughter stuff. And then you have tea together and then she goes home. And when he tells the story of what he's doing, he cries. Because what we're doing is we're giving him something that he never could dream that he could have got before. The head of my IT department talked about the day he went to pick his daughter up from school for the very first time, and how she ran across the playground, flung her arms around him and said, "Daddy, what are you doing here?" What we're asking people to do is to focus when they're in the office, to get rid of all of that busyness stuff, often attending too many meetings that you shouldn't attend, maybe spending too much time on social media, being interrupted. What we're asking people to do is to rethink that. And the prize for rethinking that is a change in your life. And the solutions for that come from the team. Things like the quiet hour, things like locking your phone away, things like putting a cap on the number of participants in a meeting so that we are very clear that you're not actually always running on, you attend hundreds of meetings often in a year. Half of them you probably didn't need to be there. And the great example of this one is a Microsoft experiment in Japan, which they did no more than 5 people in a meeting, no meeting more than half an hour. And they ended up with a 39.9% improvement in productivity off that one thing. So our trial spawned something, and this is broadly the thing that is the 4-day week movement today. So since we've introduced this thing has gone absolutely global. Because when I started, I expected one article in our New Zealand Herald, and I expected one thing on TV. One of the TV companies expressed an interest. We stopped counting when we hit 12,000 articles. And 4 years later, this week is a typical week. We have been interviewed from Hungary, Korea, Japan, Canada, the UK, and New Zealand and Australia. This is a train that is coming down the track. It is a fantastic opportunity for change. So what I'm conscious of, I've done my first session, so what I'm going to ask you now is the broader question: would this, you think, work in your business? And the starting point is, what's the biggest obstacle to it working in your business? Right, got the presentation back. Now, so what I'm going to do in the second half, because no doubt there were a lot of people that were sitting there saying, well, no, wouldn't work in my business. My thesis here is, yes, it will, and that you'll get a whole pile of benefits from this. So what I'm going to do in the second half is I'm going to show a few examples, but I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about my own company, Perpetual Guardian. We are possibly the dullest company in the world, in that we are a trust company. And by the way, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to work for a 130-year-old trust company. We do death. That's what we sort of do. Yet, we brought in the 4-day week, and then suddenly people started to view us in a different light. They viewed us as a dynamic, go-ahead, innovative organization that actually was a great employer. So that was a massive change. You know, we had people waving at our cars as they drove around the streets of Auckland and giving us the thumbs up sign. We got so much coverage for this. And now here we are 4 years later. And after our little crazy experiment, we now have got movements all over the world looking to try the 4-day week. And I thought what I'd do is I'd share a couple of examples. So remember, everybody comes in with the same thing. It can't be done. I can't be more productive. And my manager thinks it isn't going to work. So here we have Bolt. 91% of managers, 94% of workers are really happy with their 4-day week program. They're 84% more productive. They're 86% more efficient with time, and 84% of their employees have better work-life balance. That's Bolt. Their experience is, and it's not unique, Indebted, another company. 93% now they know what success is. One of the challenges is that traditional companies used to measure by how long you stayed at work. What we're not interested in is not how long you stay at work. We're interested in what you produce. And therefore, if you start to rethink that, the time isn't the relevant issue, the output is the relevant issue. Now, in Indebted's case, that 98% of their staff then said that for the 4-day week positively impacted their well-being. And consequently, they got a 283% increase in applicants. Now, we're all sitting there again around the world staring at this issue of the Great Resignation, and we're facing this question of how do we attract and retain staff? And yet again, a consistent theme about everybody who introduces the 4-day week is that actually you get a massive increase in applicants. Here's Owen, another interesting point. Their staff absenteeism reduced by 59%. They also got an increase in applications. And I agree with the comment here that it's easy to get caught up on the numbers. But what brings the project to life is the real life stories from our employees, the things that show that their lives become materially better as a consequence of implementing the 4-day week. But, you know, it doesn't just stop there. There is wider social impact when you think about implementing reduced hours working. There is workplace benefits. Now, one of the big ones is gender pay. So, for example, my head of HR, when I introduced it, was a woman who was working 4 days a week, but she negotiated an 80% pay package. Yet I know that she was delivering a full week's value. So we put her salary up. 20%. We put it up, back up to the full level. And then what we've done is that we can apply exactly that same test through part-time employees throughout the company, because the 180-100 formula can apply whether you're working 1 day or 3 days or 5 days. It is 80% of that time that you are working, but you get paid as if you were working that full allocation of your contract. Now, this is a big one. The health benefits, and I've pulled down the UK statistics. So the UK loses 17.9 million working days. That's between 33 and 43 billion pounds a year, caused as a consequence of work-related stress, anxiety, and depression. And at any point in time, globally, about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of the workforce will have a stress or mental health issue. Now, if you've got more time to recharge your batteries, if you can't work a 5-day week, but you can do 2 days, day off 2 days, that actually has a material impact on your ability and your to handle stress, and a material impact on your mental health. We found, since we've implemented this, that the sick days at Perpetual Guardian have halved. And the evidence suggests that people use the additional time that they have off to exercise or to spend time with their families, to educate themselves or volunteer. Now, this is research that's come from Henley Business School. You can see what the range of things that people are able to do here, but it goes further. If you're going to have more time, you've got time to do things like home cooking. That impacts on obesity. It impacts on family cohesion. 49% said they would spend more time in fitness, 48% in study. How does that fit in a world where we're trying to upskill our workforce in order to be able to face the challenges that are brought by things like AI? 25% said they would do more volunteering. In our own model, I have to accrue 4 days leave on the 40 days that I gift my staff off a year. So what we've had to do there is we've said, right, for those 4 days, we want you to give those back to the community, pay it forward. So if you sign up for our productivity policy, our 4-day week policy, you commit to give 1 day a quarter to charity. Now, this is not a journey I expected to be on. I will freely admit it that I never thought that after 4 years, I would have spoken in 99 countries worldwide, that there would be such support for this concept. We think the global audience for the 4-day week now exceeds 5 billion people. If you want to see how far we've come, that's the thing on the left of the slide. 7th December 2021, when the Congressional Progressive Caucus endorsed a 4-day work week bill introduced by Mark Takano in the United States. Now, the fact that even the United States is thinking about reduced hours working shows how far things have come. But there are legislation or government-sponsored pilots in Scotland, Ireland, Spain, Israel, Japan. Japan has passed legislation about 4-day week. India, likewise. Russia, likewise. New Zealand, Finland, Belgium, Romania, and Lithuania have also passed legislation enabling a 4-day week. Now, we do this through this program. It's the 4-day week Global Foundation. We run pilot programs. We're running one now in the United Kingdom. We had 700 companies express interest in joining it. The first pilot has 60 companies in it, and we run a cohort that helps us to mentor companies to try and bring this to account. And we also run this global research, which is led out of Boston College in the United States, but we also have Oxford, Cambridge, and Wharton, University College Dublin all working in it. And as I've said before, if you want any more information, go to the 4-day week website, or if you're feeling up to it, read the book. Now, the question I would then pose is, having seen that simple examples, different companies around the world. And by the way, that covers things from manufacturing. Volkswagen does a 4-day week. Unilever is experimenting with a 4-day week. Do you now think that you could put that in your company?
Is that your question, Andrew?
That's my question.
I'll ask one question first, because there's a bit of a, some people are saying that, what about things where your job is where you actually do your job, like hospitality or nurses on a ward, where your job is actually time specified?
Okay, let's deal with that one. So one of the big problems I'll deal with hospitality first, then I'll go to nursing. So hospitality, you've got to separate the job from the impact on the company. So if you actually look at what's happening in hospitality, one of the biggest problems is attracting, retaining good quality staff. And quite often that's because people have to work different shifts, and what they're often on is on minimum wage. And if they can get a bit more flexibility in their work, what they then do is that means they hang around longer. Now, the evidence suggests there's a couple of restaurant chains, for example, in the United States that have done it specifically because they mean they can attract and retain higher quality staff. The impact on the business is actually the business profitability goes up, notwithstanding the fact that they've had to recruit more people, but they've also massively reduced the regular turnover that they have in their wait staff. So it does work in hospitality. Now, medicine's an interesting one. The Americans kill 250,000 people a year in their health service as a consequence of misdiagnosis occasioned by stress or overwork. You've seen in the UK that we were 15,000 nurses short because people leave the industry because they're stressed. Now, what that means is that the NHS then has to either defer operations, it has to then either get in locums at high cost, and it also then has a problem that it loses experienced nurses and has to bring in less experienced ones. So if you can create an environment where people stay in the industry, notwithstanding the fact that you will need more doctors and nurses, yes, you will, but when you start to measure it on the output, what you find is you get better health outcomes, and better health outcomes is really how we have to measure productivity when it comes to the NHS. It's not about how many people we have. And the evidence from both Iceland and Sweden is that the quality of healthcare goes up materially. And bizarrely, notwithstanding the fact that you need more doctors and nurses, notionally 20% more, the true additional cost, baseline cost to the organization is a fraction of that, but the health outcomes are a multiple of that.
Okay, so question is, do you now feel you can implement the 4-day week? Andrew, this is the most controversial topic we've had all day. There's people for and against it. Let's see, we'll come back for 10 minutes of questions with you after these breakouts. Okay, folks, so once again, let's put the questions in Slido. There's been a lot of questions in chat as well, but let's go for Slido. The first one is, do part-time staff get a pay rise? Andrew?
Well, in effect, they sort of do. Look, I think the way it works is anybody on 4 days who's giving you 5 days of output, then frankly, they should be paid for 5 days. Everybody else can get paid for their, say, 3-day contract, but they're only then working for 2 days and a bit rather than 3 hours. So it's an implicit pay rise. It isn't necessarily a pay rise.
Okay, okay. What practical things did teams do differently to make the 4-day week work? I think you said a little bit about this, but tell us more.
Okay, we have a quiet hour. You put a flag in a pot. That means you don't get disturbed for an hour. That actually theoretically then gives you 3 hours of productivity out of a single hour, if you look at the statistics. We don't allow people to eat their lunch next door to somebody else, because how can you concentrate when somebody's eating a reheated curry? We don't allow breakout areas, because then those conversations are always far more interesting than you are where you go to padded areas where you move away. And if you're incapable of not looking at your phone every 30 seconds, we put lockers at the end of the office and you can lock them away. Now, those are simple things that eliminate an awful lot of interruptions. This is not rocket science, trust me, Henry.
Okay, folks, any more questions?
I think we've got a good question here, Henry. More questions coming in. It just popped mine down. There was something about, what would you say are the first 3 steps that should be, so what do you suggest the first 3 steps should be for any of us who like the idea in principle, but come out in hives at the thought of how to go about it?
Yeah, it's not as hard as you think. Trust me, if you want to see my announcement to the staff, it's on YouTube somewhere. I have no idea how to do it. But don't overthink it. The message number 1, do not overthink this. Stand up, say, look, we're going to support this idea. We're going to trial it, have a look at how we do trials, join one. But the key thing is, don't overthink it. Just say, we're going to experiment. It's a safe space for us to try this. And you will be surprised that your people will find the solutions that you're looking for. They did for me.
That's the key point, isn't it? It's the people decide it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not top down. This is bottom up.
Okay. Jason, yeah, I'll get that. Laura, are you okay to link to that video?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What was it? Maureen, any more down there? Any more questions?
There's sort of questions, and it's around that whole thing about productivity versus quality. So are you losing the quality by reducing the time that productivity?
No, not at all. Quality is just as important as productivity. I mean, that's key. You know, customer service, our outputs for our customers were sacrosanct. That had almost number 1 priority for us. So no, the reality is what we're asking people to do is work smarter, not longer. Why did we end up with 5 days a week? Well, because Henry Ford had a manufacturing plant back in the 1920s, and he decided that actually 5 days was going to be the norm, and that meant that his staff had 2 days off each week to buy his cars and drive them around. Why is that relevant for the 21st century?
Did it not work for some staff? I think you do have some staff still working 5 days, don't you, Andrew?
We do. About 15% of the company at any point in time work 5 days a week. There are 2 groups on that. One is newcomers to the organization. We make them work 5 days for a while. So when they shift to 4, they remember just how appalling working 5 days is. And so a great way of starting. The other thing is that we have some people, it's an opt-in. If you don't want to work 4 days a week, you want to work 5, we're okay with that, because after all, I'm paying you the same. I'm paying you for the output. If you can do it in 4 days, you get 5 days pay. If you can do it in 5 days, you get 5 days pay. It's no skin off my nose whether you're there or not. And some people socially, there's a great story out of Bangladesh when somebody tried to introduce it in Bangladesh, and they had a lot of seamstresses, and they said, no, we're not working 4 days a week. And they said, why not? They said, because our mother-in-laws are at home, and frankly, we want to get away from them.
Okay. There was a... So, coming back to, have you seen this working in social care or residential settings?
Yeah, we have. I mean, in fact, one of the very early studies here was Gothenburg. So there's some very good research out of Gothenburg, and I think there's some out of Utah as well, from memory, that indicates that yes, it does work. Again, you've got to be clear, it does cause, you do need more staff to do it, but when you actually look in the macro, the way the results work mean that economically it's highly viable.
Okay. So then would you say that this works better in larger organizations than in smaller ones?
No, actually, it doesn't really matter. It's harder to implement in a larger organization, but let's give you the 2 parameters. We've got people, who will do it in 2 or 3 person firm. But then, you know, well-known organizations that are doing this, Panasonic is doing a 4-day week. Unilever is trialing a 4-day week. Volkswagen is doing a 4-day week. In fact, it's been doing it for years. So it doesn't matter whether you're big or small. That just changes how you implement it. And can you implement it at one go? Small companies can, or do you have to do it division by division, which is what normally happens in big companies?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, what more have we got? Let's see.
The other one that I've just found is, and normally people would ask about this, how does it affect your annual leave? So
it doesn't. It doesn't. So this is the point. A lot of legislation around the world is, and ours is no different, is linked to a calendar week. So if we end up with, that's why we actually accrue 4 days leave on the 40 days we gift you off. So your normal leave is the same. With the only thing you don't get is you don't get a double dip if there's a public holiday. We deem when a week has got a public holiday, that's a 4-day week already. But no, it doesn't matter. We don't adjust that at all. Why would we? So the only thing I do is because of that anomaly, that I ask that anybody who opts into our policy gives back to their communities of their choice 4 days a year where they're volunteering or they're doing community service of some shape or form.
perfect.
Okay. Go on, I'm going to ask a quick question. 4-day week, yes or no? If you're in charge of your organisation, yes or no? Which would you go for? Oh, you've won them over, Andrew.
Well, can I leave them with one thought, please, Henry? And that is, this is not the train I expected to be coming down the track, frankly, but it's the train that's coming down the track, and it's gathering an awful lot of momentum. And you are actually, as organizations, faced with a choice. And the choice is, do you either get on this train or do you run behind it down the track? And now that's a little harsh, but if you think about it, your biggest risk is not whether you implement a 4-day week. Your biggest risk is your biggest competitor does it first.
Good point, Andrew. Good point. Okay, one more question. Will the organisation go for it? Yes or no? So you said if you're in charge, you'd go for it. Will the organisation go for it? less strong there, but there we go. 1 or 2 yeses. Okay, Andrew, thank you for stimulating us. Thank you for challenging us. And big round of applause for Andrew.
Thank you. Good to talk to everybody.